As a young girl, my dad used to wake me up in the middle of the night to watch horror movies. It's still one of my favorite memories I have with him. So as we enter spooky season, I'm reminded how much the little girl inside me is so different from the woman I am today. A new favorite activity of mine, in fact, is cleaning. There's something about a clean, fresh, empty space that brings peace to my insides, the way those memories of horror movies with my dad used to bring me. I've learned in my short time on Earth that the scariest things in life are the demons from our past, our childhoods, the ones now overgrown with cobwebs if we haven't taken the time to clean them. I no longer look to movies for a scare, when around me all I see are broken people who never took the time to go back into their inner child and move past the generational traumas passed down from parent to child. If we're not careful, like the spider's prey, we too get caught in the web. In a candid conversation, my next guest and I sweep through the toxicity in our own cultures and how it influences the decisions we make as adults, hopefully clearing the way for one step closer to freedom.
We are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining. You are listening and watching, and that's okay. I am your host, Paulina Butska, and today we are joined with Reina Fuentes. And Reina, we haven't actually met in person ever.
No, we haven't.
We know each other because when I started pitching my idea to people around me, my mom was, of course, one of the people that I talked to about this. And you work with my mom. Without giving too much away, we today are talking about cycles and the fact that life continues in cycles until those cycles change. So for today's episode, we are calling it, I've been living in a cycle, and that's okay. So let's talk a little bit about, welcome, and let's talk a little bit
Hi.
about your cycle.
Thank you for actually giving me the platform to share my experience, and hopefully it can resonate to someone else and give them that aha moment where, oh my God, that sounds like me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the only one, which is one of the biggest things that usually when we are stuck in the loops like that, we think that we're the only ones experiencing it, and it's part of what kept me there. I didn't identify with anybody, and I didn't think it was possible that you have women that are so successful in so many areas, and when it comes to your personal life, you make these bonehead decisions, and you're like, wait, I can't even share this with anybody, and that's where the cycle stays, because you're not really addressing the issues, and you're not going deep enough to say, why do I keep doing this? Why am I in this? Why am I accepting it? Why am I hiding it? Why am I trying to pretend that it's not there? So in my story, my husband, which we were not married, and that was the other part of it, that we lied to ourselves. I was in the relationship with him for 20 years, and we have 3 children. And people give you signs of what they are. But when we tell ourselves that, oh, I can fix it. All he needs is a little love, right?
Those famous words.
Dysfunction attracts dysfunction, right? So you're attracting a dysfunctional person that mirrors you, and you're so comfortable with each other because you are both. From my experience, I did not see my issues. I saw his.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that, and I know a lot of people would understand me when I say, oh, but I can help him. Oh, but all he needs is understanding. Oh, but he's never been understood. Oh, he never really had a family. Oh, he never really had anyone to really love him. Oh, he never was supported. Or, and you put yourself in that vulnerable position where when you end up with a narcissistic man like I did, they take your power away, because you're so busy trying to help him and fix him and get him to where he needs to be, so he could be that person that you have in your brain, that you think, that idea of a man, that potential, right? And you stay there, and you make excuses, and you try to fix it, and you keep going and going and going until he breaks. And when he breaks, if you don't step back and you say, no, wait a second, he is this and this and this and that, but he was always this and this and this and that. And I chose to try to fix it. So that was on me. Until you stop just focusing on the person, you're going to keep choosing the same friends. You're going to keep choosing the same kind of guys. You're going to keep choosing the same work environment, because narcissism is everywhere. Your boss can be a narcissist. Your friends is a narcissist. And we attract it. We attract it because we're giving out that vibe that whatever it is that we need, they feed on it. In my case, I wanted a family so bad. I grew up without a dad. My mother, like many Caribbean women, left me with my grandmother and came here. So the family structure, they have in a family, the mother, the father, the house, the beautiful, that was so important to me.
You wanted the American dream.
Yes. With the picket fence and, apple picking and,
Yeah.
and just everything that you see in the movies that we lie about, it's being put in our faces, what it's supposed to be a home and how it's supposed to be. And my first reality of it was when it just snapped one day, and I was like, wait a second, why is it that I'm the one that's always making it work? Why is it that I'm the one that's putting everything on hold so it could be putting my needs and my dreams and what I want to do later, we'll do it later. Oh yes, baby. No, of course you're gonna do that. Oh my God, yes. Wait, what about the kids? Oh yes, baby, of course. But what about this? And in the head of, yeah, I'm doing it for my family, or I no, this is what you're supposed to do as a wife, or this is what you're supposed to do as a mother, because you have to think about your kids. The deeper issue is that I'm not valuing myself, because if you're in a healthy relationship with someone, it should be, yes, let's do it together, or you do it now and I'll do it later. It should never be after. Let me do me. Let's make me big. Let's make me, I know women that put their husbands through law school and doctors, and they're waiting. And when the time comes, and it falls apart. Mm. And you kept all of your dreams and all of your ideas and all of your thing on hold. And then you break up with that relationship and you go to the next one. And because you haven't really looked at what the issue is with you and why you're giving away your power and why you're putting yourself second and why you're not looking at the worthiness of you, then you end up with the same guy, or the friend that you have is the friend that you're the one that's always saving her. You're the one that's always going. You're the one that's always, and you have to be there for her at her time. And when it comes to you, it's never an opportunity, it's never available, it's never, because they're doing their thing. And then you find yourself again sitting there missing something. Mm-hmm. You're feeling empty. Something is missing because your needs are not being met. And the reason why your needs are not being met because you're not meeting them yourself.
Let's start at the beginning. You said something so profound. You said that two negatives do not form a positive, right? We learned that in science.
Not in no relationships. No.
Right. And I think that you said it so eloquently when you said, we kind of attract the people to us that of like where we are. I go back into my own relationship and I remember I thought I was so strong. I was just going on this like great finding journey of myself. I had just finished therapy and I was doing so well. I was at the height of my career and I was just moving up. Everything was coming to fruition for me, right? Everything that I wanted to. And right. I met somebody who I thought was going to elevate that. And instead, I found somebody who was as broken and as insecure, if not more broken and more insecure than I was, right? And so I thought I had it all together, but really I was attracting the same kind of thing to me that I was. Certain situations would pop up. I would be like, oh, I don't know if that's totally right. Am I the one that's screwing this up? Are you the one who's screwing it? Like, where is this coming from? So I think one of the things you said was I used to go into me, right? I used to give that person excuses.
Right.
And then go internally. And I would be like, what is my role in all of this?
Right.
We do internalize and we almost do it the wrong way.
Yes. And if you happen to be with someone that is a master manipulator and knows how to gaslight you, they know how to make you doubt. But that little voice inside of us that we choose not to listen to, we all have it. Sometimes it whispers and sometimes it screams at you. And your body sometimes gives you a reaction when you know that something is off because you're smart, right? You know that you're not supposed to be in that place at that time accepting certain things. But you want it to work and you want to make sure that it's not you, because that's the kindness of us, right? We want to make sure that you're not going to walk away from the relationship too soon, or you really want to give it a try. So when they make you doubt, and that's part of the whole why you have to work on yourself, so that way you can stand on your ground and stand on your truth and not allow anybody to rock you, right? You should be able to question yourself, and you should be able to have that one person that you can say, hey, like your mom, you can go, mom, am I really outside of the relationship? So that way you can come back and say, no, my friend, you're wrong. If you can stand in that truth, in that reality, and work on it, then yes. But if in their relationship all you're hearing is, but it's your fault, but you were not there, but you make me angry, but the things that you said, but the things that you did, if you wouldn't have said that, if you wouldn't have done that, and we can turn around and say, I am not responsible for your feelings. I am not the keeper of your good moods. I am not here to accommodate you and how you are processing what I'm doing. I am here to work with you, and I should be able to express myself and tell you what I like and what I don't like, and we can work on it. But it cannot be that you don't say the things that you want. And even when you voice them and you are in an abusive relationship, they have a way of putting it back on you. And usually we believe it, right? We believe it because we're questioning it ourselves. And that's the loop, right? You continue to question the dysfunction without really going for the real problem. Why am I accepting this? And what is it? What really am I contributing? Because the reality is, and in the relationship, it's two people, right? We either feed off of each other's dysfunction or we help each other grow. When you come from a dysfunctional background, that mom, dad, and everything that has happened in your life is trickling down to you without even knowing it, then you become codependent. That's what you know. That's what you're comfortable with. So you see this guy that's so wonderful and so great, but on the surface, on paper, he's wonderful. But because you're not 100%, he's definitely not 100%. Because a guy that is in a good place will not be attracted to us. They can see our weaknesses. They can see that there's something off.
Again, I think it goes back to, kind of what you are, you put out there and you attract. So if you are in a healthy spot, you are likely not going to attract somebody that is unhealthy to you, right? If you are in a healthy spot,
you would recognize it. You would recognize it immediately. Like I think that right now, what you went through and what I've been through, from the first 10 minutes that you speak to somebody, now. You're like, oh, I heard this before. And now, because we went through it, whatever little the bells that go off, we listen to it. Before, I wouldn't listen to it. Before, I would be like, oh, you're too sensitive, or I was so busy trying not to be my mom. Because my background is that my mom was the Latina that did not take any nonsense, and she had no problem picking up her kids and breaking up. Too hasty. So I did not want to be hasty, and I did not want to be like everybody else that I saw. So I gave myself too much. I was too willing to work in things that couldn't be fixed.
Two things come up. The word naive, and I say that in the sense of, because we are running away from a situation like you, who said, you didn't want to be like your mom, who was so hasty. You almost became naive that you wouldn't be hasty. So you were going to choose better, and any lie that you were fed, it kind of comes back. And let's focus a little bit on that, because I think we do not realize how many of our traits we get from our parents. And we can say, I don't want to be so hasty like my mom. I don't want to be as jealous as my mom or my dad. We go in those cycles, and we are our parents, by the way, until we break those cycles, those generational cycles, right? And we come from two very, I want to say, strong standing cultures. The Spanish culture, me, the Polish culture. I think there's so much pride there, and there's so much that happens behind the scenes that we don't want to talk about, that when we do get ourselves into situations like this, it's that much harder to get out of them because of it.
I come from a background of warrior women. The women in my family have all been warrior women. When it comes to education and working, they have been women that break barriers, and they have that sense of pride. But at the same time, because they come from a dysfunctional country, which is very misogynistic, very male orientated, my mother didn't have the upbringing to see the difference between a narcissistic, abusive man. And that's another thing that's very important when it comes to cultures. They don't even see it as an abusive. They see it as that's the way the men are. So the men in my culture are raised to be womenizing pigs. Everything is permissible. They can have 2 and 3 women at the same time. They can do whatever they want. They are the king of the castle. And they can come home whenever, they can stay out and do, whatever they want. My mother and my aunts decided we're not taking that. We're not taking that. So their solution on trying to break the cycle of abuse was that they would break up. Children or no children, you cheat on me or you don't come home, that's it, it's over. Mm-hmm. And the next relationship that they got into, it was the same man with the same traits and the same craziness, because the problem
different body, same type.
The same, a different day of the week, it's the same story. I tell my daughter, there are things that you can let go and you can work on, and there are things that I call my non-negotiables. And I learned that in the 20 years that I was with your dad. So in a relationship, you're going to have things that you like and things that you don't like. You're 2 different people with 2 different ideas, 2 different backgrounds, and everybody has their own little things. But there are a set of rules in non-negotiable that as a woman, you cannot back down of those. If you're 5 minutes late, let's say, for instance, for me, lying, it's a non-negotiable. Because once you lie, once a liar, always a liar, right? So the minute you lie to me, all bets are off. Cheating, non-negotiable. Because if you cheated once, you're going to continue to cheat. If you were weak in life, you're always going to be surrounded by temptation. We don't live in an isolated island, just the 2 of us, right? You're going to have all kinds of people around you. So once you determine your non-negotiable, that is your foundation to start breaking the cycle of how to be treated as a person, the things that you need. And that if you say to your partner, I need 30 minutes a day for myself so I can feel like a human being, so I can take care of you. I don't know if in your background, women have no time for themselves. They work, they're mothers, and then they come home and they have to cook and clean and take care of him. Yep. Even though they came from working 12, 13, 14 hours, and he'll be sitting there and taking care of. And then what about me? I am a daughter of God too. So those are the things that need to be reassessed. And the only way that that's going to happen in any culture is from us. As women, we stand our ground and we look at the men and we say, this is what I need for me to feel like a human being and for me to be a better mother and a better partner for you. And those are the non-negotiables. So if I come home tomorrow and I told you that when I come home, I need 30 minutes to get myself together, right? Because I'm coming from work too. But he had a hard day. He'll tell you, you're so selfish. You're only thinking about yourself. But sweetheart, I told you that this is something that I need so I can really listen to you. What we end up doing is forgetting about ourselves and taking care of him. And then in the back of our head, we start resenting that, right? And you start keeping tabs. Subconsciously, you resent it. No matter what anybody says, you do resent it. Because now he's taken away from you. And now you don't feel valued. And now you don't feel appreciated. But that was you, right? That's your decision. I'm not saying that he's not a selfish individual. But then you're giving it and you're not standing your ground. You're not sticking to it because we're afraid that we're going to lose him or because we have whatever fears we have. And we go back to the loop.
You said that the women in your family would go into these cycles where one of their, if somebody would cheat, they would break up, and then the next person would cheat and they would break up. That sounds a little bit like a non-negotiable.
It wasn't non-negotiable, but she wasn't working on herself to attract the right man.
How do we know the difference between a non-negotiable and that's a very fair non-negotiable, right? Like, I do not want to get disrespected by getting cheated on. So that's where I draw my line. But after that, where does the work start?
My mother had we have 3 sisters with 3 husbands. Her first, my older sister, this is when I say to you that she kept choosing the same man. This is her first relationship, her first man, virgin lady. He had children and another woman in a different town, and he fell in love with her. He's a cheater. He's cheating on somebody else with you. So he wants to marry you, whatever, but he's a cheater. He is in a relationship with somebody, whether it's a girlfriend, they're not married, whatever it is, he's in a relationship with somebody and he's cheating with you. He left the family to come with you. What do you think he's going to do to you? So we put ourselves, when I say that you have to work on yourself, is that you need to understand if you're with a man that's lying to you and cheating and is dishonest, why are you surprised that 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the line, he's going to be lying, cheating, and dishonest with you? So you're going to leave him and you're going to choose somebody else that is doing the same things. So when you're standing your ground and you defining your non-negotiables, then you have to tell yourself, oh my God, he's so delicious. He's sexy, but he's a liar. I can tell you, Dominican men are delicious. They're liars. They're liars and they're cheats, and I will not date a Dominican man. Where are you from? No, thank you. That's my non-negotiable, because I know that the culture, unless it's a Dominican man from here or from Europe, an islander will never come 3 feet near me. I'm sorry. And that goes into my non-negotiable. If you don't want to be lied to, don't go with a liar.
We talk about the fact that you said, one of your non-negotiables now is the fact that you won't date an islander, right? You won't date somebody from your own culture.
I've never dated. My ex was from France.
That's where I was headed, right? So
yeah.
So you've never dated in your own culture, and you've dated from outside of your own culture, and
I married my own culture, and he was exactly the same man. My biggest thing was that I did not want to marry a man that will have children outside, because my father has so many children, and I would never ever want for my children to experience what I experienced, where I met a brother in a taxi cab. He was my driver. Seriously. Yeah, he was my driver. And we looked so much alike. Your mother. Yeah, no, exactly. It was traumatizing, really traumatizing. He looked at me and he was like, where are you from? And I was like, oh, Dominican. And you start talking and he was like, what's your mother's name? And he was like, oh my God, you're my sister. That kind of craziness.
Wow.
So I chose a guy from Martinique, French West Indies, and he ended up being exactly a very suave, sophisticated, narcissistic man that didn't show me that he was, but he was my father all over again. Because I never dealt with that dysfunction. I never dealt with the problem of the daddy issues that I had. So when at the beginning you say we become our parents, we also marry our parents.
We do.
We marry our parents. Unfortunately, we do, unless you pay attention and you really work on it and you accept it for what it is. You forgive your parent. You see your parent as a human being that is flawed, and then you have to be so aware of everything, so that way you don't marry your father, you don't marry your mother, because that's all we know. You try to run away from it, but you carry in the luggage with you. No matter where you go, that's it.
Right. Let me preface my next statement so that nobody takes this out of context by saying that my father was a wonderful man. He was a wonderful father, and he was not abusive to myself or my mother or my brother at any stage in our lives. But I think there were other issues that we did see, right? There were, infidelity was something that did happen in their relationship. There was a lying that happened. There were other things. And then towards the end, there was just a lot of trauma from the actual suicide of my dad, right? And to some level, the person that I ended up marrying did remind me in my father's worst days towards the end exactly of my father. And I think you said that so well, that we do end up marrying the people that we don't necessarily want to be, or the people that we don't want to strive to be. The exact opposite. I remember so vividly being in the very infant stages of my relationship going, I don't want to be this jealous, and I don't want to be this way, or I don't want to be this way, because I seen that in my parents' relationship. It was one of the toxic traits that I always said, that I don't want to do that, right? Like, I don't want to bring that into my relationship. And it still was there, right? That would still continue to come up and show up in different ways. And throughout my life, one of the things that I had said to you right now before we started recording was that my marriage was not my first abusive relationship, right? Like but I've always said that, like, the moment that line is crossed, I won't go back, right? Or I walk
Right.
away before. And I have in the past, right? Like in there's never been a time that I can think of where something escalated as far as it did, the way that it did in my marriage, where there's so much physical abuse. And so
Right.
we continue those cycles. Either we're not aware of them, or we think we have broken them, or other things happen in our life and then we don't realize that they just kind of tack on to
Right. Right.
the already, I guess, dysfunctional things, that the traits that we already carry, right? Because I think for me, and I'm not sure that this is true for you, but I think that this is kind of what you're getting at, is that, you know, eventually the things that you're running away from is exactly what you became. You ended up taking all those things and saying, I'm going to do the opposite, but you never actually worked on them. You just,
No.
you added them into your repertoire of things that you didn't want to do. And instead you kind of put it out into the universe and attracted exactly that, right?
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned the universe. So I was a believer of the law of attraction. You know, your words are magical. And I was always, because I grew up without a mom and a dad, my focus was on having a family, a father for my children. So I would always ask for a father for my children. I want a father for my children. I never asked for a husband. I never asked for a mate for me, because I didn't have a mirror. I didn't have anything to look back on and say a functional relationship, men and women. And I think that from my side, and for the people that I see, they're very dysfunctional relationship. Male-female relationships around me were very dysfunctional. It was either the woman was the one abusing the man, because there was the other side of it, where my aunt was like the man of the house, and she would be like, shut up, sit down, which is not normal.
No.
Because that's also another, and he would be the one cleaning and cooking, and she would be like, what are you doing? This, you know, flipping the script. Or the man will disappear for weeks, come back a week later, you know, and it was just nothing, no reference on how a woman should be dealing with a man. If you want to break the cycle, you first have to go around healthy relationships. So what is a healthy relationship? A healthy relationship is a relationship where you're going to argue because you're two different human beings, but you're going to do it productively, and you're going to do it caringly, trying to understand the other person. Not trying to impose my views on you. No, you got to do it the way I say. No, it's either what I say or nothing. And those are the kind of relationships that were happening in my life, where what the man said, the woman will be like a kid. Oh, do you think I can? What do you think I can do? No, we're not doing that. And that was the end of it. Asking permission. You're in a relationship with whatever the dynamics are there, men, male, female, 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 you know, whichever way, whatever it is that you're into, that's not your parent. You are an individual. You don't need to ask permission. You can inform them and you can come to a happy middle, but you cannot ask somebody, oh, can I go with my friends tomorrow? And he'll tell you no. What is that? In breaking the loop, in breaking the cycle of abuse, the first thing is about you healing yourself, taking care of yourself, identifying what you need to be happy on your own. What is it that you need? What is it that you require to be happy? And once you have that clear, then you do your non-negotiables. And whoever comes in your life, because it's not going to be magic, it's not going to work right away. I mean, at least for me, I'm 54. And out of the 54 years of my life, I spent 25 with one person. That's half my life. Mm-hmm. So for me to deprogram myself, it takes work.
What was the moment in your relationship where you said enough is enough, and said that you knew that cycle had to break for you? What was that moment for you?
Oh, there were several. So I was a dancer, and I met him when I was rehearsing. He was a dancer also. When I said at the beginning that we have the little voice that talks to us that we don't listen to, I didn't like him at the beginning. I felt that he was too arrogant. And dancers tend to be very arrogant. And being European and dancing, he's a fantastic dancer. There was just something about his energy that I did not like. Over the months, we ended up being in the same place at the same time because we both had the same ideals, where I wanted to create a dance school for underserved children where they can go and practice ballet and different types of forms of dance, but they don't have money. And he wanted to do the same thing. So that's what brought us together. we had an amazing dance school. We were together. It was like magical. It was like the perfect relationship. We're both dancers. We both have the same ideas. We're both into yoga and the natural things. And woo, oh my God, it was so beautiful. But in the back of my head, there was something that wasn't sitting right. Whenever anything needed to be done, he never said no to me. It would be like, yeah, baby, yes, okay, baby, but you know what? Let's try to do this first, and then we're going to do that. That was the first thing that wasn't sitting well with me. But going back to I want to have a family, mother, father, the whole image of it, he was feeding off of that. Had my first child. I did not want to have a child right away. And his way of getting me to be grounded was saying that for us to be able to be a real family, we need to have a child for him to feel like we're really a family, because he didn't have a family either. When I tell you about we attract the same person, he grew up without his family. I grew up without my family. Let's be a family together. But the bells were going off. I was like, why does he want to have a baby? We're creating a business. We're both dancers. We travel. If I have a child, I know that I'm not going to be able to do the dancing the way exactly, because I did not want to leave my kids alone. And I didn't listen to that little voice, and I let it slide. And before you knew it, we are 20 years into the marriage, 3 children, and then the person that he really is came out. He wanted to bring in another woman because now I couldn't cater to him the way I did before, and I couldn't give him the attention. And a narcissistic man, when they have children, they get angry because it's not about them anymore. He's not the center of the world. And mind you, 90% of dancers are narcissistic. That's why they're so wonderful on stage, because it's all about them and I'm wonderful in creating. But to be a family man, you can't be like that. So what did it for me was when my son looked at me and said, you are so smart, Mama, and you're the one running the business. Why is it that they never mention you? It's always papa, 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 papa. And I was like, at the beginning, I used to say, I don't care. And then I was like, wait a minute, you're right. We are a team behind doors. But in the front of the people, it's all about him and his school and his children. And they was like, these are my children. This is my school. And this is it. And that's what started making me kind of like reevaluate everything. And then when I started putting my foot down and saying, oh no, we're not doing it that way, that's when it broke. Because when you are with a narcissistic man and you say no, World War III, you can't say no to that person. You have to go along with what they're saying, because that's your job is to cater to them. Your job is to do whatever they need to do so they can shine and so they can be the bigger, better version of themselves, regardless of what you're going through. So it was actually my children and the fact that he wanted to bring in another woman and and create a bigger, happier family, because why not, right?
I mean, the more the merrier, right? I guess.
Exactly. And funny enough, he found someone that was willing to do it. And then you put yourself in such a vulnerable situation that when you start asking, when you finally start asking, it's too late because the person already buried you. So they're looking down on you like, what are you saying? We've been doing this for 20 years. Why are you trying to change things now?
It's almost like it's too late for
it's too late.
In their head, it's too late for you to be talking at this point. And
you're like talking crazy, lady. What's going on with it?
Yeah,
this is working perfectly. Why are you messing up the family?
What are you doing? You are the problem, correct? Like
that's exactly what he said to our children. Your mom is breaking up our family. There's something wrong with her. She is breaking up our family. We're fine. And I'm like, but I'm not fine, because I wasn't fine at all.
You weren't fine. And
no, of course not.
So many of us who get stuck in these relationships that are with narcissists or with people who brainwash you or people who just gaslight you, really, these are words that up until now, I don't think I've ever spoken them. I don't think that even in my relationship, I'm vocal to say that, like, yes, I'm a victim of abuse. Yes, I'm a victim of, I'm a suicide survivor, but gaslighting and narcissism are still words that I'm like learning to be okay with saying for whatever reason.
Yeah. And it's not just saying them, it's identifying it, because gaslighting, if you're with a sophisticated narcissist, because they're different levels, right? Friends do it to each other all the time. Manipulation is manipulation. We do it sometimes. You smile at somebody and be like, oh, come on, you can do this for me, you know?
Mhm.
But gaslighting is such a damaging because it breaks you down to your lowest common denominator. It makes you doubt every single decision, every single thought. If women could really understand how damaging somebody gives you a slap, right? You're in an abusive physical relationship, they give you a slap, it hurts you mentally, but once you snap out of it and you reconstruct yourself, you could be like, yeah, I was in an abusive relationship. He used to hit me and I am good. But when somebody plays with your confidence and with your intelligence and with yourself, your sense of self, that's what gaslighting is. Somebody that looks at you and tells you, really? And honestly, really? Is that what really happened? It makes you think that you're crazy.
Mhm.
And if you already have issues with your confidence and with the way you feel about yourself, that one little question from somebody that you love and respect that tells you, what are you talking about? That never happened. I never said that. Let me tell you, my ex-husband,
Mhm.
whenever we used to have discussions towards the end, I used to record everything and I would come like I was going to a lawyer's meeting with a pad and I would be like, okay, so let me repeat this to you. Did you just said to me, once I figure him out, and the problem with situations like that, when you're with a narcissistic acute narcissism like he was, and I had 3 children, it wasn't over at all.
Mhm.
That's when the
It's not
real
gonna be
war
over.
begins. That's when the real war begins, because then that what they try to, they shift everything to the children. So whenever I would speak to him, I would write everything down. I would literally write everything down to the point of Tuesday at 2:35, you say blah, 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 blah. Is this what you just said? I just want to be clear, because what they do is that they're so good at making you doubt yourself. And as a woman, when you come from a dysfunctional background and you find yourself in that weak position, somebody that makes you doubt yourself even more, it's that's the end for you.
Somewhere towards the middle of my relationship, there was this moment where I would constantly think I was crazy. Constantly, right? I would say one thing, and by the time it was repeated back to me, I was like, it was so twisted, it was so morphed,
That's not what I said.
it was not at all what I said. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I would never understand why I would have a conversation with somebody else and they understood me perfectly. And the person that I was with, who I should be able to share everything with, would just take everything I said and would transform it into something that was totally the opposite of what I did or what I said
Right,
or what I
right,
meant.
right, right.
And I did not go as far as recording, but I remember I went as far as reaching out to certain ex-girlfriends because it
Right.
got to the moment where I felt like I was crazy, right? I'm like, there
Right.
is no, and I was so conscious of the fact that I was like, I'm not crazy. I know when I'm
Wow.
crazy. Okay. I
Right.
know when I'm
Right.
having a
Right.
bad day. I know when I'm in a depressed cycle. I know when certain things pop up. I'm very self-conscious and very
Right.
self-aware of when I
Right.
step into a cycle that I should not be in. But this was different, right? So I
Right.
reached
Right.
out to girlfriends of my ex-wife, and I would just be, and I was like, I know we don't like each other. I know we shouldn't like each other.
Right.
Can you just tell me what happened?
Right.
And every last one of them would validate everything that I'd gone through. And they'd gone through the
Yeah.
same thing,
The same
right?
thing.
And the worst part in all of it was that when it came back to my ex-wife at the time, it went from me getting the validation I needed to her saying, oh, so you violated my trust by going back to my exes.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
trust? What
Yeah.
trust? I'm just trying to make sure I'm not crazy, right? Like
That's
that's
part
the
of
thing.
the
Like I went
narcissistic
as
cycle. Yeah.
far as trying
Yeah.
to reach out to people who I was so uncomfortable. So many people that the people that you said so many horrible things about. I am going back to them with my
Right.
head tucked under, saying, can I ask you on advice about this person that has said
Right.
horrible
Right.
things about you? And
Right.
I was validated and then invalidated all at the same time.
Every relationship that my ex had, ended up with them not talking to each other and him saying horrible things about the other
Correct.
person because it's never their fault. They are the victim and nobody understands or loves them. And I remember the person that he was right before me, and I used to look at her, and she was a former dancer as well, and I knew her because the dance world is so small. Before I even met him and had anything to do with him, we used to cross paths in the different dance classes. And she always, I'm a very good judge of character. I feel people. I'm an energy person. And it never came off like her being, and I used to be like, Carol did those things. Carol was like that. And I would leave it alone. You give them the benefit of the doubt. And then when I found myself in the situation where he was saying things that I heard him say about her, I was like, wait a second. And I called Carol.
Because you do what you know, right? Like, I mean, if you're the crazy one, then let me see how crazy I am, right? Like, then I will show you crazy kind of type, right?
And at the time, I was upset at her. And I said, why didn't you tell me that he was a nut? She said, you would not have believed me. And it's true. I wouldn't have believed her. I would have taken it as the angry ex, because they're so good at preparing the territory to look like they're the angels and everybody else is against them. It takes a lot for women that come from dysfunctional backgrounds to understand that particular how people, and it's not just your partners. Your parents do it to you, your friends do it to you. A lot of people, and it's so subtle and it's so part of our everyday life that we don't see it. We really don't notice when people are trying to. How many times have you heard a friend say, did I really say that? I never said that. And you know they're lying, right? And you let it go, okay, whatever you say. My advice, and it's what I tell my children, you could tell them, and this is what I say now, this is my mantra, and I was going to make a t-shirt out of it. We're going to have to agree to disagree. If you think that that's what happened, good for you. But I know, like, validate your own self. Don't let somebody put those little, cobwebs in your head. You're not going to be able to change anybody, but at least you stand strong in your ground and you say, you know what? I'm not crazy. I know that this is what you said. And if you want to continue to lie, go ahead, lie to yourself, but I know this is the truth. And let it go. Either you choose to continue in that friendship or that, but be clear about it. Because what happens is when you continue to play that game, you're damaging your own self. And then it gets to the point where you're like, man, did it really happen? Like, the brain is so an amazing tool that you tell yourself that, yeah, the other person is right. Oh yeah, maybe that really didn't happen.
I know that you have taken everything that you have been through, all the dysfunction, the toxicity, the narcissism, the gaslighting that you've been through in your relationship. I want to see, how do you break that cycle for your kids who have also grown up seeing that, right? Because you did essentially inadvertently, not wanting to, you created that toxic cycle in your home and your kids witnessed that, right? So how do you break that cycle for your kids?
My children are older now, so it's easier for me to communicate with them. I speak to them as a person, not as a mom. Number one, I tell them that I am a flawed human being. One of the most important things, and I tell all the ladies that I work with, that the first step is to apologize to them. Apologize for choosing the wrong father. Apologize for making the decisions that at the time I thought were correct, but actually ended up hurting them. And tell them, when you speak to your children as a woman, there's power in that, right? Because they can identify with you as a person and speak about the reasons why I made the mistakes that I made. So that's what has helped me maintain a great relationship with my children. And it opened the communication in a different level where we speak to each other as humans that are flawed and that are trying not to continue in the cycle of abuse. But the key to it all is the humble tone that I take with my children. If I am trying to heal whatever needs to be healed, take accountability for my part in the because it's not only him. We were both together in this mess. And I think that what happens in a lot of divorce and a lot of separations is that there's a lot of finger pointing, and we get so stuck in our pain body and what was done to us that we don't acknowledge what we contribute to the madness. yes, he's a piece of artwork. And he knew what he was doing when he played me like a fiddle. But I chose him and I chose to stay there. I couldn't leave. And that's what I say to my kids. I stayed because I couldn't leave. At the time, I didn't see it. At the time, I didn't know how it was possible for me to do it. And the biggest magnet, the biggest glue that kept me there is my need to have my children be with their dad. And it was a crazy dad. It was a dysfunctional dad, but I wanted my kids to have a dad. So yes, when you look at it right now, they ask me, why didn't you leave? But leaving means breaking the family.
Mm-hmm.
Leaving mean being my mom. So having those honest conversations is what has helped us as a family, as individual. My daughter now is 28 and I can talk to her as a woman. My boys, that's what it is. If you speak with the truth and bare your soul to your children and show yourself as a person, not as mom, but as a flawed human being, that's what happens because they love you. You're their mom. They went through anger. We went through, and I had to swallow it. I had to sit
Mm-hmm.
there and just like, yeah, you're right. Yes, I'm sorry. And all that came out of my mouth was, I'm sorry. Yeah, but watch your tone. I'm still your mom, but yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. No, seriously. And a couple of times I had to like tap them in the mouth, the curse words, because I'm the mom. My youngest one is the one that's having the worst time because being young, he saw the two faces of the dad.
Mm-hmm.
The face that I didn't see, he already saw at 4 years old. He saw that other side that took me until like 10 years later, I saw it. But because he was so young, he was in between worlds. So he's like you, a survivor of abusive relationships, and it's a suicide survivor
Mm-hmm.
because of. So that's why to me, going now and speaking to whoever I need to speak to is so important because my son, I could have lost him. I could have lost that child that sat there. We, as parents, we don't understand the things that children see and hear because we're not thinking. Even when we're talking on the phone with our friends and you have a young child next to you, he's listening to everything, he's grasping everything, and that's the parent. That's their parent. So, in my son's immortal words that are tattooed in my heart, that piece of shit person is my dad. That's 50% of my DNA. Am I going to be the horrible person? I don't want to grow up to be that. And that's why he didn't want to be in this earth.
That was so
And
heavy. That was
my
so
my
hard.
it is heavy. My
It is
advice
heavy.
to
Every
you,
every topic that I've had on this podcast,
it's
my
heavy.
gosh, they are
We don't
so heavy,
realize.
but
Yeah,
they're so cathartic to talk about
yeah,
because my gosh, no, I did not see abuse in my family when we were growing up. Luckily, like I said, I had a beautiful family. We saw other things, but like you said, from a
right.
child's perspective, you do see the things that are wrong. I remember even as a child, as a
Yeah,
teenager, seeing certain situations that my parents would get into and be like, Mom, that's not okay.
that's not
Dad,
okay.
that's not okay.
That's not
Like you can't say that. You can't do that. You can't
right,
like,
right.
you guys have to be the adults here. And um, I think it took me a long time to realize that my parents were flawed and that my parents are human.
When you started seeing them as people, not as parents. And that was the key of what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Anyone that's listening to this podcast and you have those issues and you have children, present yourself to your children as a human. Speak to your children. And it's very hard to look at your children and say, I am so effed up. It takes a tremendous amount of being humble to you for me to look at my daughter and say, I chose your father because I am flawed. Because you're the parent, you're supposed to be Superman, you're supposed to be
Right.
Superwoman, you're supposed to be the person that they look up to. It takes it's not just being humble, it's having the strength to bear yourself to your children because you're not supposed to be. You're supposed to have all the answers. That's what they tell you, right? You're supposed to be everything. You're supposed to be bigger than God in their eyes. Oh my God, no, they cannot know that. If you want to help them, you have to tell them. I look at my daughter and I tell her, when somebody comes and speak to you, a man, because she's going to end up going with somebody like her dad, right? When you have a man, listen carefully, because you grew up with a narcissistic father. You know the words, you know the looks, you know the feel, the taste of it, you know the texture of a manipulating narcissistic man. Don't run for it. Don't listen to that little voice where he tells you no, it's not true. And a lot of times she will call me. She will be on a date. Mama, do you think blah 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 blah? Am I crazy? No, you're seriously, seriously. But
I
she's
laugh
able.
because I do the same. I'm like attached at the hip with my mom.
Yes, yes. And you know what? It's the most wonderful thing, because your mother will be the only one. And even when you don't see it, because we live through it, we can tell you, you know what? Yeah, no, you're not crazy. Yeah, go for it. Or no, now you exaggerate. Sometimes I say, oh, you know, you're paranoid. No, you're exaggerating. But we have that communication because she sees me as a person, and she's using my mistakes and my flaw in my knowledge to her advantage. But you can only create that with your children if you're honest. I know for me, my fear was that they were going to reject it and say, my mom is so flawed. We want nothing to do with you. You're crazy. Look at what you did to me. And I thank the universe every single day that they were more, because we had a good, like you with your parents, you grew up in a loving, it was dysfunctional, but it was loving. So that saved me. But I think that anybody that's listening, please, you have to be very, very crystal clear about all of the issues that you have. And you'll be surprised how much help you get from them.
And of course, doing it in like age appropriate ways, right? I think, the conversations I have with my mom now are so different than the ones I had with them, at 15, 16, 13, 14, whatever, like growing up.
You have to be right.
Be honest, but I think there's a way to be honest without traumatizing. There's a way to be honest without oversharing or breaking those boundaries. My mom's words with me were always like, I'm your mother first, you're a friend second, and so I always knew that that was the person I could call. I was never afraid of my parents. Granted, there were always those moments where I knew maybe I was doing something wrong, and I'm like, but that's what we do, right? Like you're a teenager, you're a child, you push those boundaries. But overall, I was never afraid of my parents. And I think that it was so much of that was because that open line of communication was there. And they were so honest with me about, just them being human and the things that they've been through in age appropriate ways of talking.
That's a beautiful thing, because in my culture, parents don't speak to the children. My generation is trying to do better. The first generation of Dominicans that were born here, we're trying to do better. But growing up, they don't speak to you because they're your parents and you don't ask questions at all. So the dysfunction was into the 10th power over there, because who do you speak to? You cannot go to your mother and ask, why the hell did you go out with that guy? I mean, didn't you see? You're not allowed to do that. So that was the first thing that I decided to do when I became a parent, was that I will have open conversations with my children, that they are permitted to come as long as they come with respect. They can say and ask anything, because we're human, and if you don't understand it, who else is going to explain it to you? The other thing that you said that was very important is age appropriate. You have to have age appropriate conversation, because if you are going through this situation right now and your child is only 8, you have no business talking to them about the lying, manipulating. First of all, they're not going to understand, and second of all, it's going to build resentment that is going to blow up in your face. When you speak bad about the other parent, it's not going to help you. It's going to hinder your relationship.
You now not only do you do so much work on yourself, and you do so much work with your kids and trying to make sure that they are on the right path to really realizing what these red flags are, and realizing that, there was dysfunction, whatever power that dysfunction was, to whatever power that dysfunction was there to, but you can still have a functioning normal life.
Right.
And you now have dedicated a part of your life outside of the work that you do every day. You also now help other women.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
So like I say, I come from the Dominican Republic, very dysfunctional culture overall. Women, I mean, the country, it's still illegal to do an abortion in the Dominican Republic. That's how backwards it is when it comes to the role of the woman and the power of men. And that you have women that are lawyers and doctors that are still waiting, sitting at home, waiting to have food until they cannot eat until their husband gets home because they have to serve. They still that serve. And so my a lot of the women that I speak to don't even realize that they're in abusive relationships, different levels of abuse, from mental, verbal, physical abuse. Um, Coming from me as a Dominican woman, and them, the power comes from another woman from the Dominican Republic that grew up in the dysfunction, that was able to step out of it, that has semi okay kids, and I went through it. It was horrible. It was the most horrible divorce you could ever think of. And let me clarify that we weren't even married. We were together 20 years. So I really walked away with nothing, just 3 kids and nothing. And I was able to keep the kids, pick myself up, reinvent myself by myself, and still be here talking about it. So that's the power that I bring to them and the hope that I bring to them. Because what happens is when you have children, it's already bad enough to be in a dysfunctional relationship, in an abusive relationship by yourself. But when you have children, you have no idea how you're going to do it. You really don't have any idea how you're going to do it, especially if your self-esteem is non-existent. If that person have beat you down, that you don't know how to even form 2 sentences without his consent, how the heck are you going to step out of here with children? So what I do is that I go in front of these women, I literally go to their houses and I help them get themselves together. No, we're going to call this lawyer and I know this person and we're going to put you, no, he cannot do this to you and he cannot do that to you. And I am here and you can call me and yes, you can do this. And the kids can stay in this school and we're going to do this. And that's what I do. I'm the cleanup lady in what they call in 911 situations.
I love it.
So your mother asked me, how did I know all of these things? Because in the job, I'm the HR person. So everybody comes to me, I need to do this. Where do I find this form? Where do I do this? And I already know, no, we can do it this way. Did I have that kind of brain, right? No, let me ask this person. Then let me ask the other person. And when she looked at me and she said, Reina, how do you know all of these things? And what shook her, and she called you right away. I was in front of her when she was talking to you. I said, because I was in a fucked up narcissistic relationship and I do not want another woman to go through this. So if you're going through a divorce or if you're going through a separation and I can help you, I will do that. I will pick you up. I had a young lady that I brought all her things to my house. My house looked like a storage room. I brought her to my house with her child and I sat her in my dining room table and I called her job to get her disability so she doesn't lose her job. And we got her changed to another person. I put her in a shelter. I made sure that they changed her car. I mean, all of the things that needed to happen. And I would do it until my last breath because I know what it feels to be in a situation where you don't know how you're going to get out of it. How am I going to get out of this? I had 3 kids. How am I going to be able to continue? And when you are with a narcissistic, domineering man, he's bigger than God. And it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then you look at your children and you'd rather stay. And in my culture, women stay. Women stay in such horrible situations because they don't know, they don't see the light. They don't see how they're going to get out. So if I can go in there and pull you with me, even if it's to bring you to my own house, my children already know, oh my God, here she comes. No, seriously, because sometimes that's all you need. Really, sometimes it's all you need.
I laugh because I think I grew up in a very similar household. So many things that you say just resonate with me because, again, I think our Polish culture too, there's so many things that we are super progressive on, and then so many things that we are still so far behind and stuck on. And there's such a long way to go before progress is made, whether it's women's rights or just the emotional and physical abuse that happens, the sociology, the psychology, even of the way that we even interact with one another, that the culture itself still has so much toxicity in it. And so I think, we're not far off, and we're not very different from one another in that regard.
And that's
And
why I
then,
bonded with your mom. You know
yeah,
that, right? That's how we
listen, my
bonded.
mom, it's what a funny world that we live in, because I always thought of my mom as a therapist when she would do
Mhm.
hair at the salon, because how
Yeah.
often do you get somebody on your, on your chair, and I would hear all these women and these men that would come, and they would literally spill their guts to my mom,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
she was their therapist, right? Which
Right.
was good and bad on so many different levels, but for the most part, she would be able to connect, and she would take things so personally, and she'd bring them
Right.
home, and she'd try to
Yeah.
help, and she did help in so many different ways. And then I find that myself, she created a monster in that, I say, because I have that same problem, right? Like I think for me, I'm like Captain Save a Ho, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm
That's
like
me. That's
Mother
me.
Teresa complex here. I want to
Yeah.
save everybody, and certain
Yeah.
people you can save, other people you
Yeah.
can't save.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Reina, you did what you needed to do. You saved yourself, you saved your kids, and until you are safe, you can't help save
You
them.
can help
Until you
anyone.
are saved, you can't help save any more of the women that you want to save. And I
Yeah.
think that, exactly, again, I keep going back to this, why this podcast exists is because I can't talk about mental health without talking about my story and saying that,
Sorry.
listen, I've been through it. I'm a work in
Mhm.
progress. I
Yep.
am not there yet, but there's so much that I have healed that I think can help the next person. And again, I want to be that lifeline for other people. And so I think it all comes full circle.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a reporting or hairdressing, or just whatever it may be, I think there's such a small thing that all of us can do to help one another.
My daughter, we have a phrase where they give my number to people, random people, and she'll say, "My mom always says women helping women." That's what it is. It's women helping women. And it could be a stranger in the street. It could be anybody. You could be sitting in the subway and someone needs to talk. And if you listen, those 30 minutes that you're listening to this person, you might change her life.
Mhm.
It's just taking that little bit. Sometimes it's just, you need to throw that little lifeline to someone
Sure.
and keep it going, because it's really women, and not just women, men in general. I wanted to create a foundation for the longest time, because men are also being abused and not being,
Yes.
nobody talks about it. That's the
No.
big taboo.
And so Edgy Benson is one of my guests on this podcast, and we talk about just kind of where he is in his career and how abuse was one of the things that he had been through.
Yeah.
And so if anybody has not listened to his episode, make sure to go back and listen, because what a different perspective from such a taboo topic that we don't talk
Yeah.
about often enough. And, he and I had a discussion after the podcast, even, where he said when he walked into this, the clinic that he had went to go get help, the family counseling services, and he said they weren't even prepared for a male.
Right.
And that's
Right.
the truth. The truth
Yeah.
out there is that,
Yeah.
so often we hear women are in these situations, and there are, clearly, that's why we are here talking. There are a ton of women in
Right.
this situation, but let's not forget that abusers can be anyone,
And
male, female.
we don't know about them because men are not vocal about it. It's not mainly to speak about it. My first encounter with it was when I went to child support with one of the ladies that I was helping. And I went with her to support, moral support, and to help her with the paperwork. It was scary for her to go and do something like that, to try to go and ask what is rightfully hers for her children. And while I was sitting there was a young man there that the woman was taking him, taking everything away from him. He was living out of his car. And this woman was clearly abusing the system. And he had made the mistake of giving cash payments because he was working, doing whatever to give child support. And she took him to Kermit and said that he never gave her anything. He lost everything because they garnish your checks. He was going through so much. And this was a good person that was trying to do the right thing. She was not letting him see the child, and she wanted more and more and more and more and more. And while I sat there and I spoke to him, I found out about so many other young men that are going through the same thing, with women are abusing the system, abusing them. and nobody helps him. And he was standing there looking at the social worker, telling her, but you're not listening to me because I'm a man saying these things to you, but this woman is lying. I need help. Can somebody please help me? And I became his advocate. I became the poor guy's advocate. I got him. There's an organization that I know for volunteer lawyers of the arts. And one of the ladies there, I asked for to help him please try to navigate the system. But it was a horrible, horrible thing. And I felt so sad for him because in the child support system, none of the social workers would even give him the time of day.
Sure.
Because he's coming in there as a man, and as a man, you're guilty.
Listen, I understand that, right? But I think that, you know, myself, who has been in a female-female relationship, honestly, I've seen more abuse happen with females, female abusers, than I'd like to admit. You know, and so I think truly it goes.
It's so amazing that you
ways.
could say that, because not many people say that. People, I don't know if they're afraid to admit that the women are abusing them, but no one really touches on the fact that women are abusers too. Absolutely. I lived in a household where my aunt was an abuser. She was really abusive to my uncle. I mean, we used to say, tonight he's getting beat. And as a kid, we used to laugh. We were like, oh my God, he's going to get beat tonight. I don't know if she really did it, but she was the man of the house, and you needed to do whatever. And the poor guy was an abused man. And had I been this age, I would have advocated for him. I would be like, leave her. She's abusing you. But what man from the Dominican Republic is going to go to another man and say, oh God, my wife is abusing me? Never going to happen.
Like we said, Reina, sometimes we get stuck in cycles, and that's okay. Reina Fuentes, everybody, you have been a phenomenal guest. Reina, I hope that this episode has been filled with so much knowledge, and I hope that it helps somebody out there breaking cycles. Reina Fuentes, everybody, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And by myself, I am alive, and I soar. Still I run to